Hey everybody, thanks for stopping by today. So I was working on the valve springs on the car today. Did them all, except these last two here. I decided to make a quick video. So that number 8 back there, that was tough. That required a mirror. I had to use a mirror in order to see down inside the valve spring to make sure the tip was coming out straight. So you see right there that white piece of string, that's actually rope, and I compressed it in the cylinder with the crank to keep the valves up instead of using compressed air. Compressed air I don't like the idea too much. So I'd rather use rope. The possibility of there being a knot was pretty slim, so put paper towels in the holes here to make sure any keepers that came out didn't get dropped into my oil return galley. Tucked them all out of the way. So what I'm going to be doing is showing you the fixture here, and there wasn't any instructions really on this. Very simple, but no instructions how to put it together. I had to completely rely off of one picture and trial and error. So you notice the angle on the bolt there. So I'm going to screw it down, and then there's a plate that goes across the top of the valve springs. Now the first set of valves I did, I actually had the plate upside down, and it caused me some problems. So got it figured out, got the plate on the correct way, and so I still had problems with some of the keepers on a lot of these. This one was even difficult. I mean, I'm not quite sure what it is. Probably operator error. But we got them all done, and they all work. So you see the top there, how it's got the notch? That had to be on the top, and I originally put it down thinking it was going to help hold the retainer in place. Bad idea. All it did was make the spring get stuck in it. The retainer got stuck and pushed it all around, and there wasn't any ability to move the spring around. So here I'm setting it up and getting ready to tighten it down. You see how it's pretty lined up. So what I normally would do is take a screwdriver like that and just put it right on the edge and just tap it with the back of a ratchet just a little bit, not real hard, and that actually makes those keepers loosen up a little bit. They can be stuck in there. See how they come right out? Without tapping that, most likely that would not have done that. So I'm not a professional, so I had trial and error a little bit. I had to tighten it down a little more. Didn't quite get the keepers, didn't get it down far enough to get the keepers out. And I did the second time. So getting the thing apart wasn't too bad. Getting the new ones in was really the issue. So here I'm taking off the retainer plate. And you might ask yourself, well, are you going to take it all out? Well, I am, and there's a reason for that. Normally, you wouldn't have to take it out. You could just leave that one section with the stud, leave it there and put new springs and everything in and tighten it back down. But I actually have to take this out for a reason, and I'll tell you here in a second. So off with the springs. And on this car, the valve seal and the seat is all one assembly. So just put the wrench on it, you twist it, and it kind of breaks loose, and then you can just lift it right up. That way you don't have a chance of dragging the wrench over the valve. So here I have a little bit of engine oil, and I'm just getting everything lubricated that's going to be going into the engine. I want everything to have oil on it. There's the retainers. The bottom ones were the spring seats. And coming up is the valve stem seals. And in this configuration, they're separate from the seat. So I'm going to grab some keepers here and put those over by the car so I could have them ready. And then get some springs. Now the inner spring I poke out a little bit to make sure I get it on the over the valve stem correctly and over the valve stem seal correctly. I don't want it up inside there and getting hung up on the seal. So here's some clean oil I have in a pan. I've just got it covered up. And I'm just going to get the springs soaked and put them in my little glass tray there so I can take them over to the car. Alright, well there's the first seat, and I'm going to drop in the second one, and then here come the seals. When I put the seal on, I use the ball of my thumb to push it on evenly so I don't tear the seal, and then I just slide it on down. Push with the ball and then just slide it down. Now, this is a reason why I had to take that piece off. Brian Tooley makes a seal installer. Instead of beating it on with a socket and a hammer, you screw in a little eyelet up there. It took about 5 or 6 turns. And then you put that tool over the top of the seal and use any kind of rod. I used a screwdriver and the eyelet as a fulcrum, and just it pushes down. You can feel it. You can feel it bottom out. Some of them weren't as positive feedback as others. Why, I'm not quite sure. But they all got down. I checked them, and the height was correct according to what the illustration should have been. So that's all done. And I'm going to take that out. Now I can reinstall the tool. But I guess first I'm going to put on some valve springs. I'm just pulling up on the valve a little bit. Even though there's rope inside the cylinder, they would still drop about 1/8 of an inch. So you can see when I put that inner spring down and I push on the outer, everything's now flush on the bottom. I don't have any worry about it hanging up on the side of the seal. Now put the retainers on and the mount plate. The problem with this thing is you have to make sure the portion of that tool that has a stud coming up is right between the 2 springs. It's easy to get it pushed to one side, and when it does that, it does funny things when you start tightening down the springs. This tool was kind of cheap. I think if I were to do it again, I'd get something better. You can see how it's off there. It's over to the left. Sorry about the lighting. It wasn't too great under the hood. So I straightened it up and trying to get the valve springs to sit straight so I can make sure everything's lined up. Like I said, the tool was cheap. I think if I were to do it again, I'd get a better quality one. This one wasn't bad, but there were just quirks about it. Like I always had to start with the spring on the right because it wouldn't compress as much as the one on the left. So I'd have to compress the one on the right first, otherwise it gave me issues. And just weird things like that with this tool. Oh, another thing about the tool. They painted it. Of all stupid things to do, nothing like having black chips of paint flaking off because you're torquing on stuff. So I'm using a powered ratchet, and I only used it for certain sections. I found that the vibration from the ratchet would actually move the spring around under that top clamp and get things out of alignment. So I started using a hand ratchet. It was more smooth. I had better control over where the spring went. And you can see how it's not quite circular around the valve stem tip. So it would kind of just move it along a little. It didn't hurt anything to move it with the screwdriver, but when you really started clamping down on it, you really couldn't move it. This was in the early stages of tightening the springs, so you can kind of center them up. But as you really start tightening down on them, it really starts getting down to that 400 pounds of force that spring is possible to do. And you got two springs, so it's actually 800 pounds. And having it pointed right at your face isn't a very good feeling, but you got to trust the tool somewhat. So here I'm just going to get the keepers out. And I sped this up because I really fought these things on this one for some reason. A little back and forth, and trying to get the thing in and moving springs around. It was, for some reason, this set of springs really kind of gave me a headache. Some of them went right in. And if this valve stem is not coming exactly up through the center of the spring and the retainer, it can do this. So finally got it in there and starting to loosen it up, making sure it's holding. And they inspect it real quick, make sure everything looks good, and just take the tool apart. And from there, clean up the paper towels, get rid of the paper towels, turn the crank the opposite direction in order to pull the rope out that I have inside the cylinder. Don't want to leave that in there. Here's the rope right out the spark plug hole. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. If you like it, give me a like. Consider subscribing and have a great day.